Hi everyone, I'm Amanda from Prana Thrive, and I have with me one of my practitioners here, Tracy from Prana Thrive. We are both naturopaths and gut health practitioners, so we help people to address a range of different digestive health issues and other chronic long-term health issues as well. But one of our really big areas that we see a lot of issues with people is reflux. So today we are going to talk all about reflux and the use of PPI medication. We're going to also discuss some of the misconceptions around the causes of reflux. So is reflux actually caused by too much acid in the stomach? Are PPI medications a helpful long-term treatment? And some of the other symptoms that you may not associate with reflux that can also be indicating that there is a reflux issue there that we can discuss, and ways that we help people to address this symptom as well. And the reason we're doing this video as well is that both Tracy and myself have been practitioners for quite a long time now. And this is reflux and being on PPI medications is something that we're seeing in an increasing number of our clients. And we're also seeing a lot of I guess, contributing factors or contributing health issues, either relating to the reflux itself or also relating to the medication that we're on. So we're just going to discuss some of these different topics. Hopefully that provides some helpful extra information that you can make some decisions on your health moving forward. So thanks for joining me, Tracy.
Thank you.
Would you like to start with what is reflux and some of the symptoms that we see with clients?
Yeah, sure. So I think there can be reflux there without symptoms. So the obvious reflux symptoms is a burning sensation coming up the esophagus or a bit of pain in that stomach area. But I guess what I see also is there could be a bad taste in the mouth, a bit of nausea, burping, a lot of belching. So yeah, it's really individual. So sometimes it is very obvious, and sometimes it's not so obvious that there is reflux.
Yeah, that's right. It's something that I think often we have clients list that as one of their symptoms when we first start working with them, that they're getting that sort of pain or nausea, burping. Sometimes it could be more like a tightness and a pressure in the chest as well. I've definitely had some clients mention that in the past they thought, were they having a mild like angina or even heart attack sort of situation, but then they've actually gone to hospital even in that case, and then found that they do have a lot of inflammation creating reflux that's creating that tightness and that pressure. So, so that's something that we'll go through with clients in that first consultation and really ask them a lot of questions around those symptoms as well. So heartburn is another name for it, but it's generally, there is some sort of sensation of inflammation there. So, what we wanted to talk about is it actually too much stomach acid? Because that's often what, if people go to a GP, they're told that you've got too much acid. They've described their symptom, and they've been told that they've got too much acid in the stomach, and that is causing that pressure or that burning or the nausea and so on. And so then that's when they're prescribed PPI medication, and that stands for proton pump inhibitor. There's many different names. Nexium is a very common one in Australia that's prescribed, Somac, and there's a number of other types of PPIs with various different names as well. But basically, the action of that medication is to then reduce the stomach acid production to ideally reduce the symptoms. And, for some people it definitely does relieve that. Sometimes it relieves it quickly, sometimes it takes a while, but usually sometimes it might not help at all. I've also had clients say that as well. But typically it will help to reduce the symptom, but it is not really addressing the root cause of why that symptom is there. So, when we're looking at I guess it's true, there are some cases where people do have too much stomach acid, and usually that will be assessed more, further medical investigation. So with an endoscopy, so a camera going down to have a look at the stomach lining, is there a stomach ulcer or some sort of inflammation, hiatus hernia, for example, where there is an issue with acid and creating that inflammation. But for what we see with most people is that it's more of a dysfunction in the stomach that is creating a inflammation response, and in most cases is actually low stomach acid, which is quite the opposite. So I know that's a sometimes confusing conversation that Tracy and myself are having with clients, that when we talk about asking those further questions and looking, well, is there too much acid, or is it actually that there's low stomach acid? And so then that is actually starting to create that inflammation that we then start to feel those symptoms. So many different reasons for low stomach acid. Did you want to mention a couple to start, Tracy? What do you most commonly see?
So the reasons I see for low stomach acid could be nutritional deficiencies. So we need certain nutrients to actually create stomach acid. Zinc and chloride are really important. So we can look at blood tests to actually see if there is deficiencies in these. So I'd be looking at that. I would be looking at how stress is impacting in the gut, because stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, actually tell the digestion to slow down. So we don't get enough blood flow going to the gut to be able to produce hydrochloric acid or digestive enzymes, etc. Eating on the run, just eating way too fast and being too busy. So digestion actually starts when we start to look at the food and smell the food, and we're chewing a lot, and this creates a beautiful cascade of events that actually start to stimulate the stomach acid. So they are the top ones that I'm thinking of. What else would you be thinking?
Yeah, definitely. I would say stress would be on the top of the list, especially with clients that have the longer term symptoms, where they've had reflux and other gut issues for a long time. There's usually more long-term stress. Now, that could be traumatic, stressful situations, but sometimes it's very high daily stress. So whether that's to do with their work stress, that's something I see in many, many people. And so, helping people to understand that and see, well, where is there stress we can remove? Where is there stress we can reduce, as far as, changing some of our daily activities, having plenty of time to get to work, not rushing when we're eating, because that's a really big issue. That fast eating, not chewing well. And then we start to look at some other factors like sleep issues. So if people are not sleeping well, there is a lot of new research that indicates that there is an increase because of then the effect on the nervous system, and then that's starting to affect different hormones like cortisol, and then that's lowering stomach acid, and that's starting to create more gut issues. Genetic factors, genetic testing is something I also do with clients, and I do find a lot of people are more prone to a lower production of pancreatic enzymes. We can start to understand now other types of enzymes that relate to other different foods, like histamine foods, for example, or more the FODMAP the category. There's a lot of understanding around that now. So certain foods that sometimes genetically we aren't producing enough enzymes to start to digest those foods. And then, that's not the total cause. There's lots of factors, but all of those things combined long term start to really impact on the ability of the stomach to produce enough acid and digest, foods well.
And I think a really simplistic way of looking at it is that the stomach is really struggling to digest, whether it's overproduction or underproduction of stomach acid. But we need to be asking further, what is causing the stomach to struggle to be able to digest the food? And that's where we pull together the pieces of the puzzle for the client that's in front of us. And it's always very individual, but we'd be looking at everybody's system and how it's all interrelated.
Yeah, that's right. And then there's the whole cascade of that digestive deficiency as well. So if there's low acid or indigestion in the stomach, it's creating that extra inflammation that can start to cause an imbalance of different bacteria in the small intestine, for example, that then further creates an issue as things are not being digested properly down into the large bowel. And so then we start with reflux, and then we start to get other indigestion type symptoms, pressure after, it could be an hour after eating, or then we start to get a lot of bloating and pain in other lower digestive areas. So it really can start to cause a lot of other issues as well.
And I think that leads beautifully into the proton pump inhibitors that are being prescribed aren't necessarily meant to be prescribed a long term. So they're meant to be prescribed as a short-term fix. And if there is damage to the esophagus or you're on anti-inflammatories, they can be prescribed to protect the gut. But there is a lot of long-term implications of being on proton pump inhibitors. So, we were just talking about having low stomach acid and the flow on effect of that throughout the whole digestion, but it goes even further than that. And so if we are on that medication, lowering our stomach acid, we start to see nutritional deficiencies because we simply don't have the acid in the stomach that's there to help digest and absorb food. So iron, zinc, calcium, B12, you name it. There's loads and loads of nutrients that would be impacted by that. So the flow on from that is maybe poor skin, poor nails, leaky gut, osteoporosis, muscle mass loss. So, and then as you'd mentioned, there's an increased risk of infection in like dysbiosis, imbalance of the good and bad bacteria, but also there's I see an increased risk of infection in chest infections as well, because the stomach acid there is the first line immune defense, and when that is impacted or reduced, so that's meant to be there to kill bacteria entering further into the body, then there's flow-on effects to infection.
Yeah, and that's such an important point, understanding the gut immune connection, which I know that's something we understand, in a lot of detail. So trying to explain that to our clients we're working with. But yes, it is that first line defense, and the acid there is actually very important. So then we start to see bacteria that ideally a good level of stomach acid would actually be fighting against, but instead it's then staying in our system, and we're able to actually pick it up in a gut microbiome test, which is something that Tracy and I do with all of our clients because it provides such a detailed picture of linking in symptoms, other contributing factors, potential causes of extra symptoms as well. So looking at some of those bacteria that should ideally we may have in our sinus area, for example, or in our mouth, but now they're being picked up in the bowel where they really shouldn't be. And often that is due to having low stomach acid. So it really can start to cause a lot of issues. So I guess that's where, why Tracy and I are so passionate about helping people to understand where that PPI medication is helpful in the short term. If you've been on it long term, some of the implications that can start to happen with other health issues, and then also really understanding that the medication's not addressing the root cause either. So then, we start to look at all the different, variables or contributing factors that are impacting on people. So the stress factors, the nutritional deficiencies, and so on. And I guess it's something that I'm just seeing more and more people on that type of medication. So where years ago I would see it sometimes, and often it would be a very short-term prescription that their doctor has mentioned, look, to help relieve your symptoms, go into this medication. And now I'm just seeing people with 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, even some clients in their later age brackets, maybe in their 70s. I have a lot of clients, and it's maybe been 20 years that they've been on a PPI medication. And only recently has their doctor maybe mentioned wanting to try reducing or helping them to come off that, or maybe not even, that they have actually started to research and understand. Or maybe it's myself or Tracy who have mentioned when we're working with them that, well, this has been a very long-term medication. It's really something we want to try and get reduce slowly first, and then eventually help to come off. And it's very possible, but it's not a quick fix for most people. So, though we do get quick results with clients often because there's a lot that we understand.
Absolutely. And I think it is a real shame that people aren't given alternative solutions, because it really is one of the, I don't know if I want to use the word easy, but it is like get great results with clients. So, and quite quickly as well. So we're talking clients that have had it for years and very severe, still on proton pump inhibitors and getting reflux still. And then when we start to actually address all the different underlying causes specific to that person, it really falls away quite quickly.
Yeah, that's right, Tracy. That's one of my first questions when I'm looking at someone's medication is this medication helping to relieve your symptoms? And that may sound like, in most cases, it does sound like a funny question to that person, but in many cases, their answer is actually no, that it's not helping, but they're scared to go off it because their memory is that their symptoms were more severe before, but now it's been so long, they're not even sure actually if their symptoms or they've just got more used to it. So that's, there's easy things we can do, but sometimes keeping on the medication has seemed like the easier option, but yeah, in the long term, it is definitely not. So, and I mean, Tracy mentioned a few things around nutritional deficiencies, and then we've just mentioned about increased risk of infections and dysbiosis or imbalance of gut bacteria. But there are some more serious situations starting to be understood now as well. So, increasing the risk of osteoporosis, increasing the risk of kidney issues. That's something I have started to see some, markers come up in blood tests recently with some clients. So then I'm looking at what I'm working with them. And usually this has not necessarily been sometimes in the start, but a recent client, it was more some markers that were showing up after we'd been working together for a few months. And looking back at some of the medications that she was on, because now she had been on them for longer, but then her doctor had changed one of those. And anyway, there is, for every person, we need to look at a lot of factors. But looking at the influence of a PPI medication on the kidneys that may not influence straight away, but in the longer term. And now starting to look much more seriously at the increased risk of stomach cancer. That's something that's only very recently, well, I say recent, but I think it's still maybe years, but the increased risk factor there, for the stomach, we really want to, our biggest goal with every client is to address the dysfunction in the body. And so that means that we're improving, we're understanding what is the dysfunction and where is it occurring, and then helping that person to address and improve that function. And then that will start to have so many health benefits. So, it's really just it's something that's we're just both so passionate about helping people. Firstly, to understand, have you been on that medication long term? What else can we do to relieve the symptoms initially, but the long term of what we can work on to, and not necessarily that it takes a long time. For some people, it does, but more wanting to support you with your longer term health goals, not just a quick fix for that symptom is so
Yeah,
important.
so I'll talk into that a little bit further. I think it's good for people to understand the interconnectedness of the body, that everything is connected, even though it may seem totally unrelated. So when we're with our client, we're taking a really thorough medical history and getting into the real detail of all the signs and symptoms that they're experiencing. And that gives us so much information to the dysfunction that could be occurring in the whole body. So we'd be wanting to look at nutrition, lifestyle, diet. We'd want to be looking at thyroid function. The thyroid tells the body how fast and how slow to work. So that can impact all body systems. And looking at the function of the liver. So not if there's any liver damage, but is it functioning optimally? The gallbladder, the pancreatic enzymes, microbiome. So that we love the gut microbiome here because that impacts bidirectionally the whole body. So we really dig deep to find the underlying causes, and it's always unique to everyone. I think when you actually start treating that way, that's when the body comes back into balance and symptoms start to fall away.
Definitely, no, that's right. And,
Mm-hmm.
a really long-term symptom that I have seen with a lot of clients, and I feel like I am seeing it more recently as well, is a loss of muscle mass, like Tracy mentioned earlier, but ultimately a loss of weight to the point that that person is very, very underweight. So when I first start working with someone, I'm looking at all their symptoms, but I also ask the person what their health goals are. because my goals for you as the practitioner might be different to your personal goals. So I always find that's really helpful and important to ask. And I would say that, people having weight gain issues is huge, but I might have just as many people underweight that are really trying to get to a healthy weight. And I'm not saying that PPI medication is the only cause, but it's something I'm seeing with a lot of those clients, or probably most of those clients, where they are really just struggling to get to that healthy weight, or they're continuing to lose weight and they're feeling their bone density might be reducing too. They're starting to feel weak in their muscles, and that's really serious. So that is one of the known potential side effects when it's the medication's been for long term. So, and
Yeah.
even more than more than a couple of months could be long term for, well, it's not really, but the idea that it should be used short term. But when we start seeing people are on it for 2 or more years, then it really does there are more issues that start to develop the longer that the person's on that medication.
Yeah, and good quality muscle mass, I'm not talking bulky, I'm talking about the quality of the muscle, is a marker of longevity and is really important for healthy aging. So, yeah, there's such large implications of reflux and not proper digestion. So, we're not absorbing all those important nutrients, so our body functions really optimally. But I wanted to touch on the point also that reflux, we talked about the symptoms earlier, but sometimes there's some less known symptoms. We think reflux is that burning sensation, but often like a chronic, a low sort of cough that just sort of hangs around, or if someone's clearing their throat all the time, a hoarseness to their voice, pain. So I have quite a few clients that have actually gone to emergency with pain in the upper stomach area, but so there's no burning sensation as such. And a metallic taste in the mouth as well is another common sign of reflux. Do you have any
Yeah.
others that you see that you
Yeah.
think are associated?
Definitely waking with a sore throat is another one, which relates to what you mentioned there, that sort of a dryness in the throat as well. But yeah, sometimes people because then over the day, I guess once they start eating their meals, then the pH changes in the stomach. But waking, in the morning with that, really sore, dry throat. But it's not infection. It's something that's been there longer term. It hasn't presented into any other cough, cold symptoms, though it could be a dry, tickly cough, like Tracy just mentioned there as well. So, and then that's where people have what's called silent reflux. So silent reflux is usually then it would be diagnosed with an endoscopy, which is when they put a little camera down so they can actually see the inflammation there in the esophagus or in the stomach lining. And often that would be, I guess, depending on the severity of the health issues and symptoms, maybe if they've had that more acute pain, like Tracy just mentioned, and taken themselves to hospital, I would say that's probably a more common time that people would then have that silent reflux diagnosed, or if there was maybe some other symptoms that they were having an endoscopy for, because I wouldn't say that it's something that doctors would routinely refer you to have. You usually would have to have some fairly severe symptoms. But because we specialize in gut issues, it's something that we do see with a lot of clients. So I guess that would be one of the reasons that extra reasons that PPI medication would also be prescribed, because really if you're going through the medical system, there's not a lot of other options. So then having that medication prescribed to relieve the discomfort, reduce the inflammation, and in the short term, yes, it can be, but then not understanding why that symptom has developed in the first place. And obviously that's our big focus. So,
Yeah, so we absolutely focus on finding the actual cause of the symptoms. And I do get clients saying that their sphincter, they've been told that their pyloric sphincter there's an issue there, but in actual fact, there's still an underlying reason why there is an issue with the sphincter. So we just have to keep digging and digging and digging. And I hope I can instill hope in people that have struggled with reflux for a really long time, that there is actually a solution. And more often than not, it can be resolved actually quite quickly. So I think that's why seeing a functional naturopath like us at Prana Thrive is really beneficial. But I think, yeah, because that's what we're trained in, is digging deep and finding the actual cause. But I wanted to give some just tips to people that they could use some natural home remedies just as an acute remedy for a flare up of the symptoms. So I like to suggest playing around with ginger. Ginger helps stimulate hydrochloric acid and the pancreas, so helping that upper digestive tract function better. So that can be really beneficial for aiding digestion and reflux. Anything bitter, so bitter foods. Gentian is a herb, but having a little bit of rocket just before a meal. So if you're having breakfast, you don't necessarily have rocket in your brekkie, but you can chew it while you're preparing your brekkie. Also, all your really bitter lettuces, such as the purple lettuce, the burgundy one, that's super bitter. So I think bitter foods is really good for that upper digestion. But when you're out and about, you might be able to get access to some really common herbs such as chamomile, peppermint, lemon balm, ginger. These are common herbs at hotels and restaurants or people's homes. So you can just brew up a really strong little tea and a sip on that, and that can sometimes make a difference. Do you have anything that you suggest, Amanda?
Yeah, they're all really great ones, Tracy, especially the teas when you're out somewhere, because sometimes too it is a symptom that can, flare up very quickly and suddenly. The rocket is something I love to do personally, and it's interesting once you get used to eating a certain way. There's just foods that you eat all the time. Rather than feeling you're eating it for a specific reason, but rocket, I have huge bags of rocket we go through all the time. And then, looking at other, obviously, when we're working with clients, we can prescribe really specific remedies. So, looking at nutritional and herbal remedies, anti inflammatory and microbiome supporting supplements, and so on. But there are some really great options that you can find locally in a health food store or sometimes even in a pharmacy. Slippery elm, for example. Slippery elm comes in a capsule or a powder form, sometimes in a tea form as well. And that's just one of many herbs that has a very soothing or anti-inflammatory effect that can be quite helpful as well. So that's something that, yeah, we find. And then, we are the microbiome specialists, so we love to really dive deep on your gut bacteria. And there are certain probiotics that really do help with reflux. I would say that most of the general probiotics, maybe not so much, but there are some really key probiotics that we find helpful. But it's probably something we'd need to understand the whole picture to start to look at those types of bacteria. So yeah, the foods, the slippery elm, marshmallow root is another one. You can often get marshmallow root and slippery elm together. Licorice is another great one, whether it's in a tea. Chewable, you can get licorice in a chewable form as well. So these are things that can just really help to soothe that inflammation, that are also supporting how you're digesting your food as well. So was there anything else you wanted to add today, Tracy?
No, I think that's enough for people to take away and use as just acute remedies, because at the core we want to actually find the underlying real cause, not just mask with more herbs, because that's not functional medicine.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, the whole topic of today was, really discussing, the use of PPIs and the long-term implications of that and, discussing some alternatives of things that we can really help people with. But there is, it is on an individual basis. There are so many, as we've spoken about, so many factors that we take into account for each individual person, your sleep, your stress, looking at your liver and your gallbladder function as well. So we're looking at the whole digestive system, but reflux is definitely a common symptom that we do see with a lot of people, contributing to then other factors as well. So I hope you found that helpful, just to give a little bit of extra insight. If you're on PPI medication and you're looking for help to come off that, or you're looking to actually address your symptoms and further understand, how we can help you to reduce and come off that medication, we're here to help. So there'll be some information in the link below where you can watch a video a little bit more. You can book a free call to discuss your health issues, and we'll send you some further information as well. So thank you so much for joining me today, Tracy.
You're welcome.
And thanks for joining us. Bye.